On Friday, April 6, 2018, the Humboldt Broncos of the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League were traveling to play Game 5 versus the Nipawin Hawks. The bus was carrying 29 passengers. Passengers included players, coaches, and team staff. There have been 15 confirmed deaths in this horrific collision. The level of devastation cannot be put into words for these players, for these families, and for these communities. A province, a nation, and the entire hockey world mourns. Whether you are an athlete or not, the tragedy is gripping. I played in that very league, driving those very highways, and now have children of my own approaching that age. I can't imagine what those players, families, and communities are going through. The collision itself is secondary. It is about the lives lost and the lives affected. I now teach drivers ed one province away to students that are much the same age as those players. I've been reconstructing in my mind, taking notes based on the little blips I've heard on the news and on the radio as to how on earth could this tragedy have taken place. Physically, how could this come to be that a semi-trailer and this bus had collided? I took to Google to see the highway itself, the intersection itself, in the simple hopes that the landscape would offer some evidence as to how this may have taken place. The very first report that I had heard left me completely dumbfounded. The reporter stated that this intersection was a four-way stop where there were flashing red lights to warn approaching drivers. As I began my own investigation, I quickly realized the reporter misspoke. It is a four-way intersection, but it is a two-way stop at this intersection. So I'd like to ask you the question, which direction do you believe the bus was traveling? Would it be more probable that it would be traveling from south to north or from north to south? If you've clearly made a decision, why do you feel that way? And which direction do you feel the semi would have been traveling? Do you believe it would be from west to east or east to west? And if you think that it's impossible to answer that question just looking at this picture, what is the rhyme and reason to it? There is an answer. And the answer all has to do with visibility. Had the semi-trailer been approaching from the west, the bus would have infinite sight lines up to the intersection of the semi-trailer. As would also be true if the bus was headed south, they would have infinite sight lines for a semi that was approaching towards the east or towards the west, if again it was southbound. The unfortunate reality is the bus was headed northbound, and for hundreds of meters prior to this intersection, your sight line is completely cut off. You might think, aren't you able to see through the trees? Is there any gaps where you can see the upcoming highway? The reality is there is absolutely no break in the trees, and you cannot see that intersection or what's approaching that intersection until you are at that intersection, and you're approaching that intersection at 100 kilometers an hour. At this point, until the police have all of their findings, all we can do is wonder what really happened. If the semi had done a full stop and then crept forward to see as far down the highway as they could, it would be hard to conceive a scenario where all of this tragedy would be possible. If the semi was completely still, looking down the highway to see if it was safe to get across, this semi would take an incredibly long time getting up to speed, especially with the size of load that it was carrying. Every vehicle is equipped with an event data recorder. The data recorder will tell us the speeds of the vehicles prior to the collision, at the point of impact, were brakes applied, was the steering wheel engaged, which direction was it turned, and when. At first, when I learned of this horrific collision, I thought of those highways and I thought how in one lane in each direction, what if somebody pulled out to pass at an inopportune time? And figured that would be the most likely cause for such a collision. Learning that it took place at a two-way stop sign, where the bus was not required to stop, at first I thought, why wasn't the bus driver paying more attention? Why were they not looking at the upcoming intersection? Why were they not observing the other drivers making sure they were doing a full stop? The reality is any driver, including this bus driver, would have no opportunity to see traffic approaching from the right. With all of the information at hand and seeing what that bus was up against, you see that when you look to the right, despite your best efforts, approaching at 100 kilometers an hour, which is reasonable, you are reliant upon the vehicle coming from your right to make its own full stop. That is why they have added the flashing red light to supplement the octagon, indicating that everybody approaching that intersection, westbound and eastbound, is required to stop. Even if at some point it is found out that the semi arrived at the intersection at an inappropriate speed, we do not know the reason why. It could be mechanical failure, or it could be for reasons that we are incapable of anticipating. The internet has hundreds of pictures of the aftermath and the carnage of this horrific crash. Looking at these images offers little to no understanding or explanation as to how this could have taken place. Every media outlet focuses on the northwest corner and pictures of the northwest corner. It's all about what happened leading up to the collision that we'd need to focus on if we wanted to figure out the cause of the crash. When I began my research looking into this intersection, the Google image search was from 2013. And in 2013, if you look towards the far right-hand side as you approach that intersection, you will find crosses in the ground from a previous accident, probably much similar to this one. While Street View is available for the west side of Highway 335, it is not available for the direction in which the semi would have been approaching. So for that reason, I am uncertain as to what the road surface is like approaching that intersection. However, I can tell you of a highway in Manitoba where the junction is between Highway 16 and Highway number 1. There is markings on the pavement that'll make an incredible sound with your tires that does not cause any damage, but will make you highly aware of an upcoming intersection. Even to the point that if someone had fallen asleep approaching that intersection, they would be woken by that pavement. At the end of the day, the how and the why is irrelevant. The fact is, lives have been lost, lives will be affected, and this tragedy will never be forgotten. Anybody who ever played hockey, anybody who's ever been part of a team, anybody who is a parent, can't help but bleed for this team, for their families, and for these communities. You are in our thoughts and our prayers. Please see the link below to the GoFundMe page of the Humboldt Broncos, designed to assist all family members and associates with the expenses that would be incurred in this horrific time.